Namaste. Welcome for Zen Yoga's Anjaneyasana. Anjaneyasana is our high lunge pose. Here, we will be working our way down to lunge. There's really a couple ways to get into the lunge. One would be starting upward from Tadasana, and the other would be going from the floor, either a a table pose or downward facing dog. Here, starting from Tadasana, feet straight, knees bent, tailbone down, low belly lifts, low ribs in, upper chest open, chin draws in, and elbows out. In breath to draw you up, and out breath for a swan dive. Inhale, we start with a partway lift. I'll turn to the side. We're going to bend the knees and start with this generous partway lift. It's better at the front of your mat. So here, I have a long spine and light weight on the hands. Most of the weight is in the foot and the feet. So we'll do right leg forward first. I'm going to shift all my weight to the right foot. I'm going to slowly work and step and hop that left leg back. So there's a couple ways, like I said. This is going to be a little bit of the stronger way to get into it. We'll look at the easier way. Here's a couple things with Anjaneyasana. One of the first things is this front leg position is very important. It should be ankle and knee in a straight line. Never the knee gliding in front of the ankle. So you'll see here, this would be a misalignment, putting stress on the front of the knee. So I'm going to bring it back. Thighs should be, the goal is parallel to the floor. Some might start up higher depending on the legs, but the weight should be in the legs. The front hip, try taking your thumb in the thigh crease and pulling that front hip back and toning the flesh of the buttocks down. But it shouldn't let the knee flare open or the inner front foot come up. So there should be equal grounding. Inner foot, outer foot, on both outer and inner should be equally level. Knee should stay directly over the ankle. So even though you're going to pull that hip back and tone that hip down, okay, you aren't going to lose any integrity of the foundation of the pose. So we do want to keep this. Why? Is it creates this nice long side body. Remember, we've been working on that. If that hip flares out, this side body begins to crunch. So I have to put thumb in that thigh crease, work it back, okay? I can, of course, do this from knee on the ground if that's easier to work with. So with that thigh back, you'll see the hip's not jumping forward, it's back. I have a long side body. Hips shouldn't be too far up. That would actually take you into a different pose. So here, the back leg, this thigh should lift. Picture moving this femur bone, lifting and pushing it into the back of the hamstring. So the idea here is sometimes that back leg, if we're resting it down, even if the knee's not down, it might be pushing the femur bone into the quads. We want that femur bone to push into the hamstring. Lift the leg. Back heel should be vertical. The tendency is something like this, bringing that back heel down. That's not really the posture we're looking for. We are looking for a lifted pose. I'm going to try and roll. Now this obviously has to do a little bit with the flexibility of the ankle and the feet. So I can shift forward, lift up, keep that hip back. My teacher would always say she could stand on that back thigh, working the length, chest forward, chin in, back of the head long, okay? So we can work Anjaneyasana from Uttanasana. The other way into it, we'll do the other leg or the other side, is I'm going to work into this from a tabletop pose. I'm also going to give you the option of using blocks. If you're really tight in the legs or in the upper body, or maybe just a different proportion with the hands and the torso, legs, you might want to use some blocks for some support or spacing. So here, I'm going to take the blocks. There's always 3 levels to the blocks. Level 1, level 2, level 3. So it depends on you. We'll start with level 3, work down to level 2, level 1, and then of course clear the blocks and work at the floor. So I'm going to set my blocks up in level 3 at the front of the mat, starting from a tabletop. Now again, you can come from tabletop or downward facing dog. So lunge, you can either come from standing and work your way down, or you can start on your mat and work your way up. It depends on your strength that day, your flexibility, how much stamina you kind of have going on, and also on the clients. If you are working with a student, they might have less stability. So you want to keep them kind of lower to the floor and build them up. Or you might be starting with somebody who has a lot of stability, and you're going to work to kind of keep the edge of that. So either way, it depends where you are, mind your edge. I'll start from my tabletop pose, wrist under shoulders. We'll be going to this pose a little bit later, so I won't go too far into it. Now we're going to, of course, come from here, tabletop pose. And like I said, you could do this from downward facing dog too. That would just be the hips up and back, and you'd swing the leg forward. Let's start though from tabletop. Here, I said we're going to do left leg. So we're going to take that left leg, and we're going to work it forward. Now, if you have tightness, you might actually have to pick up the foot and move it into position. That's okay, no worries. Now you'll see here, if I take the blocks, this is going to give me some lift. Now what I can do with this lift, remember this long side body I'm trying to create. So I'm going to use the blocks to be able to come up. Because sometimes if I'm down, I'm kind of hunched and compressing these side bodies. So here, I'm going to work lengthening up. Just like we did on that right side here, I'm going to turn around so you can see my left hip. Just like we did on that right side, I have to make sure this hip's pulling back. So the tendency is that hip kind of comes around. See how it turns my torso, shrinks the side body. So if I take that thumb in the hip crease and pull it back, I'm going to pull the thigh crease down and tone the flesh of the buttocks down to the floor. The knee stays stable over the ankle, so I'm not going to let it collapse in just because I'm moving my hip. Ideally, what we're trying to do here as yogis is isolate movement to one part of the body. So I'll have the hip bones connected to the thigh bone. We want to be able to say, well, can I move this hip independently with minimal movement here? Can I get that to happen? Sometimes when we move this hip, we really take it into other parts. Okay, so that thigh bone roots back, and I have some work here on the blocks. This back knee, if you're tender, this would be the beginning pose. You can always put a blanket under that back knee. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on just inching that leg back. Hands might be best flat on the blocks. You'll want to get sturdy. Now ideally there should be no weight on the hands. Starting out, there probably will be some weight. So you might work, from 80% to 70, 50, and then eventually you want to have no weight. That would be the core work here. But I'm going to start with a flat palm. Make sure I have a good position. Curl those back toes under. Make sure I have a good alignment. Go ahead and lift the low belly, tuck the core or tuck the tailbone, and then we'll slowly lift. Now you'll see these blocks give me some space to work with, and then create the long side body. Sternum moving forward, chin in, back of the head. Try not to lift the chin and close off the back of the neck. Chin comes down and in, lifts the back of the neck. Front thigh settles forward. If I can start to lessen the weight on the hands. If not, I do have that. Just watch out for the wrists, okay? If I feel comfortable, level 3, I can take it down, level 2, and progress the work here. Back heel still stays vertical. Left thigh lifting into the hamstring, not settling into the quad. Quadriceps are on the front, hamstrings are on the back. Lift this long femur bone and push it up into the hamstring. Pull and level the hips. Again, once I'm comfortable here on level 2, this may take a day, 2 days, 3 months, 2 years. Take your time. We have no rush, and the ego's not involved. I can come to a flat level. Remember, I'm going to try and keep that thoracic spine nice and tucked in, lengthen. And then eventually, of course, I can return. And there's core work that can be done. So here's Anjaneyasana. Back leg strong, good breath. If you're coming out to table, you'll release the knee and slide this back. If you're coming out through Uttanasana, rock your weight forward, step forward, bend the knees, sink the hips, straighten the spine, and close and return. Anjaneyasana. Namaste.